In the bad practice scene, the recruiter makes a number of subtle but harmful assumptions based on the candidate's age.
I'm curious. Our environment is very fast-paced and our team is quite young and dynamic. Do you think you'd be able to keep up with that?
I've worked in a range of high-pressure environments, often leading projects with tight deadlines. I actually enjoy dynamic teams. They keep me sharp.
Okay. And how are you with newer digital tools? We rely heavily on cloud-based project management, instant messaging apps, all that fast-moving tech stuff.
I've had to adapt throughout my career.
Questions like, can you keep up? Or are you familiar with new tech? May seem innocent on the surface, even well-intentioned, but they reflect implicit age bias. This type of bias, also known as unconscious bias, refers to the automatically deeply ingrained stereotypes we hold without realising it. In this case, the assumption is that older candidates are less adaptable, slower or technologically inept, none of which is based on the individual's actual abilities. These kind of questions also suggest doubt about competence, not because of anything in the candidate's CV or behaviour, but simply due to their age. And that's the problem. It shifts the focus from skills and experience to perceived limitations, and that can undermine confidence, perpetuate exclusion, and lead to discriminatory hiring decisions. While explicit age discrimination is illegal in many countries, for example, the European Union has since 2000 a directive banning, among other discriminations, on the basis of age in employment and occupation. Implicit bias, on the other hand, is more subtle, but just as harmful if left unchecked. It often shows up in the tone, the choice of words, the framing of questions, just like we saw in the bad practice interview. Take, for example, the question, are you familiar with new tech? On the surface, it might seem neutral, but when asked with a doubtful tone or without reference to the candidate's background, it softly implies that the interviewer expects a gap in competence based on age. The candidate is put in a position of having to defend or prove basic skills, whereas a younger candidate might be assumed to be tech-savvy by default. Or consider we're a fast-paced, dynamic team. Do you think you could keep up? The phrase itself is loaded with coded language. Terms like fast-paced or dynamic are often unconsciously associated with youth and energy. And the question paired with a sceptical tone communicates doubt about the older candidate's ability to meet expectations without any performance-based reason. Even the mention of long-term potential can be problematic when it's framed in a way that implicitly questions a candidate's longevity or commitment, not because of anything that they've said, but because of how old they appear. It unfairly casts doubt on someone's future contribution simply because of their age. Small cues like raised eyebrows, awkward pauses, a slightly patronising tone, or sidelong glances may seem insignificant in isolation, but in the context of a job interview, they carry weight. When an interview hesitates because asking, are you comfortable with digital tools, or emphasises fast-paced environment with a doubtful look, it sends an unspoken message. That message is, you don't quite belong here. These cues can signal low expectations, even when the words themselves are neutral. An older candidate may pick up on the interviewer's scepticism, even subtle signs like a sigh, a slight smirk or a dismissive nod, and begin to feel unwelcome or judged not on ability but on age. Over time, these non-verbal signals, when repeated across interactions, contribute to what's known as ambient belonging. If a candidate constantly encounters scepticism or surprise when they demonstrate competence, they begin to feel like an outsider, someone who doesn't fit into culture or isn't seen as a full member of the team. This is what we mean by othering, the subtle distancing of someone based on a perceived difference, in this case, age. It's not overt hostility, it's something quieter, a raised eyebrow that says, really? A pause that suggests you're not who we expected, or a comment that hints you might be too late in your career for this role. Now compare that to the good practice scene. Here, the recruiter focuses on what actually matters: relevant experience, adaptability, ability to mentor others, and problem solving in a team context.
That's impressive. We're actually transitioning to a new project management tool here. How do you usually approach learning new tech?
I tend to dive in hands-on.
This kind of behaviour reflects inclusive recruitment practices where every candidate is assessed on their merits, not on assumptions about their age, their background, or appearance. So the takeaway: ask fair, competency-based questions, focus on skills, outcomes, and role-relevant experience. Avoid coded language like culture fit or energetic when it's a stand-in for youth. Change your assumptions. Don't assume someone is out of touch with technology or not interested in growth based on age. Use structured interviews. Consistent questions help reduce unconscious bias. Value diversity of experience. Older candidates often bring mentoring skills, long-term perspectives, dynamic energy, and stability. And remember, competence and skills are not defined by age. Inclusive hiring means recognising potential wherever it appears.